Well, here we are, episode 102, January the 7th, Friday, and we are looking at today and looking at a study today about altered anxiety and perception of it. Let's dive in. So let's jump into our article for the day. This comes out of SciPost. It was posted up on December 15th, 2022. And it talks about people with heightened anxiety have altered perceptions of their breathing. Now, this was actually, the research was done and published in the Journal of Neuron, which was actually back in October of 2021. But, coming out of a state, coming out of this latest round of pandemic, it's easy to realize that there is heightened anxiety. As I counsel people in Texas, that anxiety is true and real and lived each and every day. And so today I really wanted to take this opportunity to dive into this because this is new research, truly talking about altered interoception, and that's that perception of one's own internal bodily state, that you can tell that, hey, my heart rate is actually going up. My breathing is shallower. My blood pressure, I can feel it. It's those internal states. But is my breathing more rapid? Is it shallow? A lot of times what they're finding is that during those instances of anxiety, those interoceptive, it doesn't happen. What happens is that smart part, the logical part, the prefrontal cortex of your brain, the one that coordinates so much different thought, it shuts off. That primal brain, the inner brain, goes into flight or fight response. And with anxiety, it's heightened. So, anxiety is one of the most common mental disorders today. And of course, we're seeing an increase in the prevalence of anxiety, especially among the world with the pandemic. But anxiety is something that affects everyone. And this comes from the author, Olivia Harrison. Whether it's personal via a loved one or in our everyday interactions, what's more, it's real. It's really normal to have feelings of anxiety when something scary happens, when these anxieties become disproportional or disabling, that we might think about treatments or techniques to help someone in their everyday life. And also in people that might be at risk before it becomes problematic. So what she's trying to really bring to the forefront here is we experience anxiety in everyday life. Everyone does. But how does it become heightened, different, change? And it does for certain people. It makes a difference in their functioning. And that's where when clients come in and they're like, I have such anxiety. And it's like, is it situational? Is it just to the workplace? Does it happen across the board everywhere? Where else does it happen? Or does it happen just on Mondays, right before you pick up your kids from school? Where is that anxiety? And then is it impairing your life? Is it keeping you from picking up your kids at school? Is it keeping you from going to work? How severe does that become? And, for many, we hear about panic attacks and we hear about, how it relates. And for many people, they've never experienced that. They've never experienced that foot on your chest feeling, like an elephant foot on your chest feeling, one that just doesn't go away, one that brings emotions right to the forefront and makes them real, one that you can't stop crying even when you're sitting at your office desk. It's those types of things that are the trip mechanism or the circuit breaker popping that Your brain is trying to tell you, I can't handle any more of this right now. Your bucket is full. And so that's what a lot of times with counseling, it's trying to empty that bucket so that you can deal with those situations of anxiety producing and being able to manage them. Some people don't know how to empty the bucket. Some people can't. So that's where a counselor or therapist comes along and truly tries to make a difference. For anyone that's suffering with anxiety, I really encourage you, seek out help. Seek the help that could help you in your daily functioning and not make it so intense. So in this study, they involved 30 individuals with low anxiety. They involved 30 individuals with moderate anxiety. And they assigned them to these two different groups by a anxiety inventory based upon their scores. So they went ahead and completed questionnaires, and 2 tasks were used to create different levels of resistance to breathing. One of these tasks was completed as the researchers used a functional magnetic resonance imaging. You might be going, what is that? So you've heard of MRIs, more than likely, being put into the tube and taking pictures of your brain, while the MRI takes still pictures. This is a functional MRI, which takes pictures in real time, so you can see brain activity, where levels are peaking, where they're declining. So they were able to see their brain activity during this. So those in the moderate anxiety group tended to report elevated levels of breathing, catastrophizing it, as compared to the low anxiety group. In other words, those in the moderate group were more likely to agree with statements of, I'm becoming afraid that my breathlessness will get worse, catastrophizing it to an end. So the moderate anxiety group also exhibited reduced positively minded interoceptive awareness, meaning that they were less likely to agree with statements like, I can pay attention to my breath without being distracted by what's happening around me, or when I'm tense, I notice where the tension is located in my body. The moderate group couldn't do this. They couldn't locate that. And so while there's a lot of important research with anxiety, this is also coupling it with a functional MRI. They're looking at how just it really shows differently in the brain. But what we're looking at is this study does have some limitations and drawbacks. That's why further study is always encouraged. This was a cross-sectional study, one that included those 2 subgroups, but not really distinguishing whether anxiety causes the change in breathing or differences in breathing, or there are different levels of anxiety, what's contributing to it. A cross-sectional study such as this can only show us that there are differences in breathing perceptions as associated with different levels of anxiety. But Harrison is hoping that, as she stated here, next we're hoping to look at how strategies such as exercise or even anti-anxiety medication may help to change both the anxiety and the breathing perception, allowing us a better understanding of how this relationship may change across interventions targeting anxiety. So really trying to look at, well, what then does make a difference? And that's why I like to include all these different studies of psychology, of medicine, of what we live day in and day out. And you might say, well, that's pretty basic, Rick. I mean, yeah, you're not going to be able to perceive these things if you're really, really anxious or about to have a panic attack. But that's where, by doing research, You're establishing a baseline to learn more and more about the human body, learning what it takes to change the human body.